I hear a lot of people talk about spiritual psychosis. I don't know that that's necessarily a division of psychosis or something. I don't know that that's the same as like religiosity or any kind of specific delusion, but spiritual psychosis does get talked a lot about because there's absolutely a spiritual aspect to psychosis. A lot of people have spiritual experiences in psychosis. Whether they believe them to be real or not after the fact is entirely up to them. But yeah, spiritual psychosis is absolutely a thing, and I think it affects a lot of people. I really don't think I've ever had a psychotic episode that wasn't spiritual in nature. I mean, maybe not all of the episode involved spirituality, but there were very heavy undertones of spirituality, and it's easy to get carried away by. It's easy to believe that you are the next coming of Christ, that you are chosen to save the world, that you can travel between dimensions, that you are surrounded by angels. You know, delusions are fixed false beliefs for a reason. You can't shake them. And when your delusions are telling you that you are an all-enlightened spiritual being, boy, you're gonna believe it. You're absolutely gonna take away from that experience a spiritual event that affected you realistically, whether you believe it or not. I've had a hard time coming to terms with my personal spirituality after psychosis because even though a lot of the things that happened to me weren't real, the effect was. So I can relate to these spiritual experiences in the sense that like I was moved by that and I was swayed by that and I believed that so entirely that I can't unsee the things I saw. I can't take back the experiences and just refute them as if they never happened. They happened, they had an impression on me, and they changed the way I think forever. So whether they were real or not, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how the spiritual experiences had in psychosis have affected my spirituality today. Before we get started, here's a little bit of a disclaimer to say that I am not a mental health care professional and I am in no way qualified to give any advice, medical or otherwise. Who I am simply is a person with lived experience having serious mental illness who is here to share with you the wisdom and insight I've gleaned along my journey of recovering from mental illness. Also, here's a bit of a trigger warning to say that the subject of psychosis in and of itself is a sensitive subject that can be difficult to talk about. So if at any time during this video I talk about anything distressing that may trigger you, you are more than welcome to leave. In this video specifically, we will be talking about spirituality, which can be kind of mind-bendy to talk about, a little bit trippy. So if that's not up your alley, you're more than welcome to leave. Moving on. So right out the gate, I don't personally believe that my psychosis was actually spiritual. And I know that that's an individual thing for everyone to determine on their own whether their spirituality was real or not, if that experience really did happen. For me, I think that I had delusions, and I think those delusions came to me spiritually, and I think they affected how I see spirituality. I think they shaped my vision of spirituality and what I believe, but the beliefs themselves weren't real. What I believe today, heavily influenced by it, absolutely influenced by it, changed the way I think, but not because that really did happen. See, it's kind of complicated because I think that psychosis is a lot of things and it's never any one thing. And so there's so many interpretations for what happens to your brain in psychosis. What I personally believe, and this is just me, this doesn't have to be anyone else's belief, is that in psychosis, your subconscious is right up there at the front of your brain. All that other filtered stuff that we go through every day, the stuff that like dictates our reality to us, the stuff that tells us like, oh, this is where I'm walking, this is what I'm eating. We don't care about that in psychosis. That all goes away and you're left with everything in the back. It comes flooding to the front and you don't have that filter. So you're picking up on things that other people wouldn't normally pick up on. You're picking up on nuances, you're picking up on energies, whatever it may be, the things that everybody else filters out naturally through their ego and it or whatever is completely open to us. So picking up on spiritual things of a spiritual nature makes sense. Because I know, for instance, that I could hold crystals and feel their energy. And that's not something I can do outside of psychosis, but in psychosis, I do have that ability. And maybe it's a somatic hallucination and I'm feeling an object because my brain is telling me to. Or maybe I really am just open to something that I'd been shut off to before, and I'm accessing things that I wouldn't normally have accessed before. This makes me very easily influenced. This makes me so susceptible to believing in anything. And we're not just talking beliefs like delusions, we're talking like people could influence my ideas. They could come to me and say, oh, I believe in Buddha and this is why, and I would probably take something from that. I would be more open-minded to it, and I would maybe even go out of my way to start learning about Buddha and Buddhism, and thus take on these spiritual practices or whatnot. Like I might find myself going down a road of spirituality that hadn't been open to me before because it had been influenced onto me. And this actually happened a lot. I actually started going to church in psychosis because I had met a little girl and she told me about her church and invited me to come along. So I went and I was enlightened to it. I took a lot from it, and I absolutely felt the power of prayer. I felt the power of like the community of being in a large hall, church, what have you, with people singing. Like that kind of spirituality deeply affected me. And those were experiences that I actually sought out when they were presented to me. I put myself in situations where I was open to spirituality. It's just that spirituality was to the max. Imagine going to church thinking that you are Jesus. You're not just going to church anymore, you're going to home to hang out with people praying for you. Like it's a lot more heightened when it gets to that point. When I believed I was Jesus, going to church was my way of checking in on my followers. That kind of spirituality is a step above your normal churchgoer. But then there were the experiences that weren't, say, influences, but were like beyond hallucinations, beyond delusions. They were like mind fucks. And I don't know what I would call this. I don't know what symptom this would be, but there was this feeling I had that I was every particle of the universe. I could literally feel myself in objects. I could feel myself one with the walls. I could feel myself one with a knife while I was cutting a pepper, which made it very hard to cut a pepper. I could feel myself shot out into the mountains, into street lamps. I could feel myself one with everything. And that's not a hallucination. That's not a delusion. I don't know what that is, but it is life altering. To feel something like that is something you take away from. That's never something you'll forget. Those experiences happened a lot, and they were varied and they were different, and they were all so heightened, feeling my third eye pop open. And I don't know if I'd say it was a hallucination, but just this kind of like a vision that came to me where the whole world wrapped around me all at once. And I heard this like wow noise in a split second, felt it reverberating through my bones, and then it was over. And in that second, I had been thoroughly changed. Those are the kind of things that, might have been a symptom, but you're never walking away from that the same way again. But it's still all too easy for me to cast it aside as symptoms because I don't relate to that anymore. I don't have experiences like that anymore. And they're contained within these episodes that are over, done with, gone. And so when I think back on those experiences, it's very, very easy for me to think, well, that was my brain chemistry. That was just the dopamine going haywire in my brain. And I don't know if I ever believed it, but I definitely don't now that I'm so removed from it and detached from it. And now that it's over, it's like the farther I am from psychosis, the more clinical I think of it. Honestly, the way that I coped for a really long time after psychosis was to shut off spirituality altogether, because I couldn't really grapple with what had happened. I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't process it. It was too much, way too much all at once. So to kind of live with the spiritual experiences that had rattled me, I told myself that was my brain. That was brain chemistry. that was biological, neurological, that was a fluke, that never happened, that was the result of an illness that was not real. And the more I latched onto that very separated belief that the psychosis was all in itself brain chemistry and nothing else, the more I actually became very nihilistic. I became incredibly nihilistic, and I stopped believing in everything, whether it was spiritual or not. I didn't believe in life anymore. I didn't believe in purpose. I was super depressed, as you can imagine, coming out of psychosis. So nihilism suited me very well. It was a long time before I really chose to believe in anything. And I do say chose because I did make a dedicated effort to try to reclaim spirituality. But my spirituality has been a lot different than what I went through in psychosis, because I would say that it's a lot more subtle. I don't have these grand experiences anymore, these life-altering events that rattle my brain in a split second. I don't feel myself connected to the universe. I don't feel my bones reverberating. That kind of stuff is long gone, and the kind of stuff I deal with now is pretty subtle. I kind of reinvited spirituality into my life when I got sober, and it has been a very complicated relationship. It has been difficult. It has been something that I didn't foresee being this hard. I guess I thought that because I'd had spirituality in my life before in any semblance, it would be easy to get connected to like a higher power. But the reality is that I was bashing my head into a wall for years before I had any kind of spiritual anything pop up into my life. Part of the issue, I feel, is that I really dislike the notion that there's any one must in sobriety. And if that one must is you must have a higher power, you must have a spiritual experience, that's a lot to ask of a person. I don't think that everybody has it in them to find spirituality, and I don't feel that there's any one way to recover in sobriety. I feel that it's unfair to demand people to have this spiritual experience and kind of force it upon them when it's hard enough as it is to find on your own. I have qualms with that. I still do. I drank the Kool-Aid, I'm in the program, yada, 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 but I still really don't like that aspect. I know it's the cornerstone. That's just me. Don't like it. But as I said, I drank the Kool-Aid, so I do the thing. And I have been working hard at whatever spiritual growth I can muster. It's just that it was a lot harder than I thought it would be. I have been bashing my head into the wall for a really, really, really long time, trying to conceptualize whatever a higher power would be. And I ultimately gave up after several years. I think I was 3 years into sobriety when I'd been taking everybody's advice, doing all the prayers they told me to pray, doing the meditation and all this shit. And I just wasn't coming up with anything. And I just told myself, you know what? I've wasted so much energy on this. I'm just going to stop thinking about it. I stopped thinking about it. I went about my life. Nothing changed until one day, just randomly, I got hit by a bolt of lightning that sort of reorganized my insides. I mean, it completely changed me. It was really, really weird. I was just walking along with my fiance, and he's very, very spiritual. He's really, really intensely spiritual. It's a massive part of his life. And me, no, not really. So he wanted to talk about it. I'm like, fine, I guess we'll talk about this super uncomfortable subject. And out of nowhere, I just got this feeling of contentment, I would say. I just had this sudden feeling that there was really nothing to worry about anymore. I have lived my life in worry for such a long time. And then I had this feeling that told me, if you're a human and you're asking for knowledge, that's kind of presumptuous of you, don't you think? Because mortals aren't supposed to handle any more than they're given. So why would you bother? Why would you question anything? Why would you go seeking answers when they'll come to you when you're ready? Just wait for that to happen. Why don't you just sit patiently until all the knowledge you need comes to you? Because it will come to you when you're ready. You're just not ready yet. So stop asking. Stop worrying. There's nothing to worry about. If something's worth worrying about, you can worry about it when you get there. But until then, why are you bothering wasting your energy? I just had this complete shift in mentality where I didn't feel like I really needed answers anymore. And I don't know that I'd really been like looking for answers, but I felt like, oh, well, that's a nice load off of me. Like, I don't have to worry about seeking higher knowledge from the universe. It's just, I'm mortal. That's all there is to it. Like, yeah, it is a little presumptuous to think that you can just ask the universe for answers. So I feel pretty content in that. I feel kind of all right with just going about my life having faith that things will happen as they will, and there's really no reason for me to bother. I don't know if that's faith. I don't know. I just kind of have this trust now that it's all good. You know, if it's not going to be good, it's not going to be good, but my life's going to continue either way, and I don't have to worry. Is that spirituality? I don't really know. All I know is that after that feeling of contentment and feeling sure of myself and feeling sure of my place in the universe, I have been great. Like, I've been happy every single day since that moment. There has not been a single day since that moment that I haven't been happy. Like, I've had my moments of anger or sadness, but every single day there's been some point in my day that I've been happy. I've been mentally stable. My borderline personality disorder went into remission pretty much right when that happened. I stopped having BPD episodes entirely right when that happened. That happened in March of 2023. I remember it so distinctly because for whatever reason, that little lightning bolt moment completely changed me. But the thing is, it was subtle. Like I said, the spirituality I have today is subtle. It wasn't some big flashy event. And yeah, it was like this lightning bolt moment, which sounds really, really profound. But if you were to be there with me on that day, it would have been like this. Oh, and then on with my day. It was just like that. It was just this quick shift. And then my life went on. So it is very subtle. It's not as like profound as falling to my knees and crying because I feel euphoric in the light of God's vision or whatever. This kind of stuff that I have today, which actually does keep happening, is so fairly ordinary that it just kind of like is interspersed in my day. Like, I have had other kind of instances like this that have been somewhat profound, but they're nothing as magnificent as what I had in Psychosis. I think today my spirituality is just kind of like going about my life, having faith that everything's gonna go the way it's gonna go, not necessarily thinking everything's gonna go great, everything's gonna be okay, but just having acceptance that it's gonna go the way it's gonna go. Life circumstances are always going to get circumstancy. So I just kind of try to stay out of the way of whatever higher power has control over things, because I certainly don't have control. And yeah, acceptance. I accept that I don't have control. I accept that my life will continue on the way it's meant to without any guidance from me. I've just got to show up for it. I think a lot of spirituality is just living a spiritual lifestyle. I think a lot of it is like living spiritual practices. For instance, being honest, being true to your word, living with integrity, these kind of things that strengthen your spirit, right? And so, yeah, it's a lot easier than Psychosis made it out to be. Psychosis made it out to be a really big deal, but my spirituality today is pretty fairly ordinary. And honestly, I think that just kind of reinforces my prior beliefs that the spiritual experiences I had in Psychosis weren't actually real, because the experiences I have today that I do believe to be real are manageable. Like, they're not mind-blowing. They're things that my mortal self can handle. And the things in Psychosis, I certainly couldn't handle that shit. No way in hell could I have handled that shit. That is some really like back-breaking spirituality right there. So I kind of prefer it. I like it this way. I think it's really exciting to have big flashy experiences like you would in Psychosis, and they are very profound and they are very, very life altering, and they can change the way you see the world and yourself, etc. But I would prefer to have what I have today, the really simple kind that is, you know, day by day lifestyle choices and, you know, living in a spiritual light, you know, that kind of stuff I feel is a lot more appropriate to me than what I was going through before. I guess that's all I really have to say on the matter. My spirituality has been such a ride, going from these really heightened, awe-inspiring experiences in psychosis to being a complete nihilist, believing in absolutely nothing, to kind of taking the pieces left over from all of that and shaping a spirituality that works for me, something manageable that I can apply in my day-to-day life. It's been a ride, my friends. And so I'd be interested to hear about your experiences with spirituality. I'd be interested to hear about whatever you believe, or if you believe your experiences in psychosis were real. If they weren't, whatever insight you have on the topic. Also, if anyone has a fun suggestion for a future video, you can let me know, because I love taking topics for videos. This subject was all me today, but there's a lot of cool stuff coming soon that I'm going to be talking about, some of which you guys have suggested. What else? I guess you can like and subscribe to support my channel. I have some exciting stuff that I've added to the channel. I have a Patreon now, and if you'd like to support the improvement of this channel, you can subscribe there. I also have merch. There's a link in the description box below to some cool hoodies and tees. And yeah, I put out videos every Thursday/Friday. So if you're interested in more content, there's more coming soon. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.